Welcome back, everybody. We are back in 2nd Chronicles chapter 33 today. There's only 36 chapters in the book of 2nd Chronicles, so we are quickly approaching the end of this book. But for now, chapter 33. Imagine somebody took a beautiful, peaceful kingdom and they turned it into a spiritual demolition derby. And that's what you got here in chapter 33. So welcome the reign of King Manasseh. And Manasseh, he takes the throne at the age of 12. Yes, 12 years old, because what could go wrong with putting a 6th grader in charge of a country? When I was 12 years old, I was probably trying to decide whether or not I wanted to eat a blow pop or a Laffy Taffy. But Manasseh, he's ruling a kingdom. So, verse 1 says, Manasseh was 12 years old when he became the king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. He reigned for 55 years, which basically means that the people of Judah had decades of spiritual chaos, because as we will see, Manasseh wasn't the greatest. He, in fact, was the king of the bad decision Olympics. Verse 2 says, He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, following the detestable practices of the pagan nations that the Lord had driven from the land ahead of the Israelites. So the writer here is saying that Manasseh did all the wrong things. Like, not just a few of them, he did all of them. If there was a sin, then he speed ran it. He did all the things that were evil in the sight of the Lord. And let me run through his spiritual resume real quick. He rebuilt all the altars his dad had torn down, because Hezekiah, his father, had spent his entire life cleaning up the kingdom spiritually. Manasseh walks in and says, Dad, you know your remodel that you just did? Hated it. Boom. Idol altars everywhere. He installed altars for Baal because he wanted a storm god statue in his front yard. Weird. He worshipped all the starry hosts. He's basically obsessed with horoscopes and things like that. He practiced sorcery, divination, and witchcraft. He was basically up at 3 a.m., Googling how to cast spells. He consulted with mediums. He said, Miss Cleo, I'm calling you on the psychic hotline right now. He put idols inside of God's temple. That's kind of like putting a Taco Bell inside of the church. It's just absolute spiritual vandalism. Verse 4 says, He built pagan altars in the temple of the Lord, the place where the Lord had said, My name will remain in Jerusalem forever. Whew. Manasseh, you're killing me, buddy. And, get this, he sacrificed his own children. Now this is where the humor stops, because this is absolutely awful and horrifying, and it's showing us just how far Manasseh had fallen from God. In verse 10, the Lord spoke to Manasseh and his people, but they ignored all of his warnings. So the Lord is basically warning him, and he is ignoring it like a pro. You know that feeling when you talk to a toddler, and they're staring past you to a wall like this? Yeah, that's Manasseh. So God shakes his head and he says, All right. So then the Assyrians show up. They capture Manasseh in hooks, like giant fish hooks, and they haul him off to Babylon like a disobedient cat in a carrier. And this is the moment that Manasseh realizes, perhaps I may have made some questionable life decisions and choices. But the part that people often leave out of this story, the part that people often forget, is that Manasseh had one of the biggest redemption stories in the entire Bible. He was imprisoned, he was humbled, and he was far from his home. But in verse 12 it says, But while in deep distress, Manasseh sought the Lord his God and sincerely humbled himself before the God of his ancestors. So he cries out to God, and shockingly, God was moved by his entreaty and brought him back to Jerusalem. Yes, God lets him return as king. Won't he do it? I mean, that's the spiritual equivalent of letting the kids who burned down the kitchen come back and make dinner. So when Manasseh gets back home, he gets to work like a man who finally read the instruction manual, and he removes all the idols, he cleans out the temple, he restores the altar of the Lord, he tells Judah to worship God once again. Basically, he goes from cursed kingdom chaos mode to we're trying our best mode. And he couldn't undo the past, but he took responsibility moving forward. But then towards the end of this chapter, he dies and his son Amon becomes the king, and let's just say that his son Amon did not inherit the repentance part of the story. In verse 24 it says, Then Amon's own officials conspired against him and assassinated him in his palace, but the people of the land killed all of those who had conspired against King Amon, and they made his son Josiah the next king. Alright, quick recap. Manasseh, he reigns like he's trying to impress the pagan Olympic Committee. God sends him warnings. Manasseh treats these like spam emails. Only when life throws him into Babylon's timeout corner does he finally say, okay, maybe I overdid it with the idol statues. So what can we pull from this today? I think the first thing that's important to call out here is that nobody is too far gone for God. If God can restore a guy like Manasseh, then he can certainly handle my messy Tuesday afternoon, and he can certainly handle your messy Tuesday afternoon. The second thing that's important to call out is that we can be forgiven our bad choices and our bad decisions, but these have consequences still. Manasseh repented, but Judah still dealt with the fallout of years of ungodliness. Forgiveness is instant, but healing is a process. The next thing that's important to call out here is that humility is important and it often changes everything. Manasseh's turning point wasn't a miracle or a sign, but it was him finally admitting that I cannot run my life without God. And last but not least, repentance is more than just feelings, it's action. Manasseh didn't just say, I'm sorry. He took action and began to clean up the mess that he had made. So, ask yourself this today. Is there an area of my life that I've been ignoring God's warnings? I've been ignoring God's nudges or his gentle emails to my soul. Then, take action. Admit that you've done wrong. Ask God for help. Take one small step to start cleaning up things. Maybe that means you're cutting off a destructive habit in your life. Maybe that means you're apologizing to somebody that you've done wrong. Maybe it means you're removing an unhealthy influence in your life. Or maybe it's simply just you praying, God, I can't do this without you. I need your help here. Because if God can turn Manasseh the Mayhem King into Manasseh the Restorer, then he can absolutely work with you. Won't he do it?